are some videos that I've just been sitting on for a long time because either I didn't know exactly how to respond, or every response resulted in a string of profanity at just how idiotic these people actually are. So here's Gavin McInnes from Rebel Media showing that even a relatively smart guy can go completely off the deep end when it comes to religion. Get a handful of aspirin, because this is going to give you a headache.
Hey guys, I was smoking a doob the other day, and I was thinking about the guy upstairs.
Yeah, that's not exactly surprising. You're just sacrificing your mental faculties to think about an imaginary man in the sky. And you want to be taken seriously. Sure, tell me another one.
And I thought, if there's one example of our own ingratitude and how audacious we are as a species, as a culture, it's atheism.
Where exactly do you get the idea that anyone ought to be grateful to the universe? How did you come to the idea that we ought to be thankful to inanimate matter for our existence? This is, right off the bat, emotionalism gone wild.
So I thought I'd just take a moment to prove to you, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that God exists.
Oh, this ought to be good.
Here's the key: the universe.
Which proves absolutely nothing about any gods. I'm going to prove that leprechauns are real. Look at these donuts! Yeah, that's not how it works.
We're sitting next to a thing that is infinite. That is a thing that is unfathomable. We can't wrap our minds around it.
First off, the universe isn't infinite. It's finite but boundless. There is an edge to the universe, but it's simply expanding into nothingness that, at least so far as we know, will never end. Secondly, the universe isn't unfathomable. We actually are pretty good at learning how the universe works, and we get better at it all the time. We don't understand everything yet, and we may not for a long time, if ever. But there's no reason to think that anything in the universe is eternally beyond our ability to ever comprehend.
That's just a little gift sitting next to you. And for you to sit there and go, not impressed.
The universe is very impressive, but it's not magical. It's not unfathomable. It's impressive, but I no more would say that we should worship the universe than I'd say we should worship imaginary friends in the sky. To do that would be idiotic.
It's like someone, they have this sort of seaside resort, and they live next to a place where instead of the ocean, it's all these unicorns who can read their thoughts and sing them back to them in a ghetto rap from 3 6 Mafia, and them going, it's just a bunch of singing unicorns. Not my cup of tea. Big whoop.
That's about the worst analogy I've ever seen. The universe is real and demonstrable. Unicorns are not. And even if we saw something amazing, that doesn't mean we should hold that amazing thing up as a god or something to be revered. Stop being an idiot.
Okay. I will prove this to you mathematically.
Oh yeah, this is going to be good, I can tell.
Let's start very simply with a coin, all right? You're flipping a coin. You get heads. Actually, why not? We have the technology. I'll flip a coin, all right? I've got it here. It's set to tails. I got a head. I got a tail. 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 This is sort of I'm not flipping it well enough. I got a head. You see, it doesn't go head, tail, head, tail, head, tail, head, tail.
No, it doesn't, and mathematically, it would be odd if it does. That's not how probability works.
There's going to be times I'm probably going to get 13 tails in a row. Now, if I go all night long doing that, there's going to be some kooky ones in there, isn't there? There's going to be one where I get heads 21 times. Now, if we were to keep doing that for infinity, we would get an infinite number of possibilities. That's how people define infinity. You see, our brains can't handle infinity, so we come up with these analogies to sort of wrap our minds around it.
First off, there's really no such thing as infinity. It's a mathematical concept that simply does not exist in the real world. It might be difficult for people to understand things on those timescales, but that doesn't make it infinite, and it doesn't make it impossible to deal with intellectually, except for those who approach reality non-intellectually.
So say we switch those to binary numbers, right? 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1. Heads, heads, tails, tails, tails. Eventually, you're going to map out every variation. And that is why people talk about monkeys on a typewriter.
This isn't a scientific theory. This is a thought experiment. And there's no infinite amount of time or an infinite number of monkeys. It is meant to show that, given enough time, virtually anything can happen. It doesn't say that anything actually will happen. But, logic and all. You just don't get it.
They say if you had monkeys sitting at a typewriter for infinity, they would type out the complete works of Shakespeare. Now, I know that sounds hard to believe.
It has nothing at all to do with being hard to believe. It has to do with probability, something you clearly don't understand. And weren't you supposed to be proving that God exists? You haven't even mentioned God since this started. Get back on topic.
And that's because we're talking about infinity. It doesn't hit the brain. It doesn't fit in the brain. But if you break down Shakespeare, if you break down each one of those letters into a number, you end up with this huge binary mass of ones and zeros. And you know that the monkeys are going to keep flipping coins, and eventually, not over a billion years, not over a trillion years, not over a trillion, billion, zillion, billion, gazillion years, you know eventually that the coin tosses will match that crazy pattern of Shakespeare's works.
Maybe not. Because there's no such thing as infinity, so you can't possibly have these monkeys doing their thing for that long. But don't let me get in the way of your insanity.
How pissed would you be when you get them and the monkeys did everything, but there's a typo on the last page? You're like, oh, we have another trillion, zillion, billion, trillion, billion, zillion years to wait for that to happen again. You fucking monkeys. Arrgh.
Someone is taking a thought experiment far too seriously.
And one of them is like this, and one of them's like that, the other's like that. All right. The universe is infinite. It's the monkeys. I should use this hand. The universe is infinite. It's the monkeys on the typewriter. So there's an infinite number of possibilities.
No. Once again, the universe isn't infinite, and there are not an infinite number of possibilities. Well, I should change that. There may be a near infinite number of possibilities, but there are a huge number of probabilities. Some things are more probable to happen than others. Given enough time, the less probable things become more likely, just given the sheer number of permutations that may happen. Some things are absolutely impossible and will never happen, just based on the physical laws of the universe. And those things are not possible, and saying that anything is possible is simply untrue.
And my atheist father is to blame for getting this in my head, because he said, look, I mean, we know there's going to be life in outer space, because there's an infinite number of possibilities. So there's an infinite chance that there'll be life, which means there'll be life. So it's got to be out there as statistically inevitable.
We don't know that there will be life in outer space until we actually find it. We have a good reason to think that it's likely, but being likely and being factually true are two entirely different things. This is what happens when you don't understand probability and statistics. And I have a feeling he's about to go down the rabbit hole, and this is going to come back to haunt him.
All right. That means that there's going to be living beings somewhere in outer space.
Well, we already know that there are living beings somewhere in outer space. We're them.
Right? We know that to be true. You've been with me so far. All of this is irrefutable.
No, all of it is ridiculous. You haven't said anything that's actually been factually true so far. You're operating on a third-grade understanding of science.
Okay. But once we start allowing that, we say, wait a minute, there'll be a planet just like Earth there. I mean, if you find one where it's just sort of these slugs just going, maybe eating just like a weird porridge sludge with a weird tongue, you go, I don't want to hang out with those, but we're close. Go another trillion years, maybe one will have like a hat on and a little hand. Anyway, you keep going trillions and trillions and trillions of light years away, and eventually you find basically kind of a human.
And nobody says that outside of science fiction, which, in case you haven't realized it, isn't real. Now, this is where I think he starts to lose it. We know life is possible. I mean, we're here. We're the ultimate proof that life can and does exist in the universe. We understand the conditions under which life evolved on this planet, and we can look at other planets and see the same conditions. And it's not that much of a leap to say that, given similar conditions, similar results could emerge. But that's assuming Earth-like life. It's entirely possible that life could be based on other elements like silicon and fluorine and methane and similar hydrocarbons. So if we come across such life, we'd likely have little to do with them because our biological systems would be so dramatically different that we'd really have little to offer each other. Of course, this is all purely hypothetical, but it's something interesting to keep in mind as we get out and start exploring our universe. We've detected possible conditions for a methane-based life form on Saturn's largest moon, Titan, for instance. But when you're talking to someone who has no clue about basic biology, like this twit, of course he isn't going to have a realistic view of things.
Well, this is the problem with infinity. We know that means there's an Earth. We know it means there's an Earth just like this.
But we don't know there's another Earth. We know that there are other Earth-like planets out there. Our telescope technology is improving by the day, and we're finding other planets out there by the ton. Given an Earth-like planet that falls in the Goldilocks zone of a comparable star, why wouldn't we expect the possibility of life?
And then you get into that whole concept of, wait a minute, if there's an Earth like this, why would it be an Earth in 2016? Why wouldn't it be 1920s Earth? Hello, welcome to Z's Earth.
Okay, I know you said you were smoking something, but this is what drugs do. They screw up a potentially rational human mind. So when are we going to get that proof of God again?
And then you go, well, there's an infinite number of possibilities. Now there's a planet of just Gavs. Now there's a planet of just yous. You watching this is a mom, a dad, a someone pushing a stroller, an immigrant grocer. They're all your fucking face.
And nobody in their right mind thinks that. But this is what happens when you get whacked out of your skull and start thinking about things that you're just not bright enough to understand in the first place.
That is statistically inevitable. Just like Shakespeare with the monkeys, it happened. But you know it didn't happen. You know there's no planet of yous. You just know. And that is God leaving a little calling card, a little ace of spades in the math going,
well, there's a ridiculous leap of irrationality. You invent an idea that nobody in their right mind would ever accept, and then you pull the idea of God straight out of your ass without a shred of evidence of any kind that God actually exists. And you wonder why people think you're an idiot.
Weird, right? I just proved that 2 and 2 isn't 5.
You didn't actually prove a damn thing, except that you're a moron. See, proving things means having evidence, and you still have none. All you have are empty claims and vacuous ideas. That's not proof, that's assertion.
Now, liberals love doing this when it suits them, when they say math is racist, when it doesn't suit them. But the truth of the matter is, there is a mathematical inevitability that there is a planet of Charlie Chaplin's somewhere, all speaking in rap lyrics. Has to be.
No, No, there isn't. And the reason you don't know that is because you're as ignorant as the liberals are. You and the liberals are operating on the exact same emotional level. You just want these things to be true. Therefore, you assert that they are true, even if you have no rational reason whatsoever to think that they're actually true.
But it also isn't. That is proof that God exists.
Well, that's just proof that you're a fucking moron.
God is this amorphous force that we can only barely kind of understand.
How do you know that? Where is your evidence? You're just pulling shit out of your ass and pretending that you have the slightest idea what it is you're talking about. But that's kind of typical for the religiously delusional. You believe what you want to believe, the things that make you feel good to believe. You're not really interested in what's actually so. And that's a problem.
And that little infinity experiment is proof.
How do you actually know that? And I know I keep asking this, but no theist ever has an answer. I mean, Gavin reminds me of Russell Brand, who I did a video on a very long time ago, where he just went on and on and on about what his imaginary friend is like, all without producing a shred of objective evidence that he has the slightest fucking clue.
So here's how you find God. Now, I know Catholicism gets a bad rap and they talk about Buddhists and your pets don't go. All that are silly little details that our petty brains have come up with to try to understand the truth.
Now you're onto something. Religion is something our immature brains have come up with to try to explain the world around us in an emotionally comforting manner. Primitive man had no idea how the world worked. It was a scary place, so they invented explanations out of whole cloth that helped them explain their surroundings in a manner that made them feel better about the big scary planet. And it's unfortunate that so many people haven't grown up since then.
I am a Catholic, but I'm not saying that Tibetans are going to hell and they're going to be in a lake of fire forever. I refuse to accept that.
No, that's Catholicism that's saying that. And you're just following the a la carte version of Catholicism, where you take the parts that you like, and you pretend the parts that you don't like aren't there. And that's really a big problem with taking religion seriously. There are no universal truths that everyone accepts. Religion is a big choose-your-own-adventure book.
I think we're all just trying to glob onto this truth that we all sense in our brains that we can find in mathematics.
Except that an ever-increasing number of people are looking at your so-called truth and finding it laughably ridiculous. You're operating out of pure fallacy and pretending everyone else is along for the ride.
And the more you give in to that, the freer you are and the more you prosper.
Which is why the most religious parts of the country, the Bible Belt for example, tends to be the poorest, right? That's where the education is among the worst, right? It's where people are among the most ignorant, right? Why is that?
That's what the free market is. It's saying, I'm going to adhere to this biology. And when I talk to atheists, I avoid talking about this. I just say Darwin. They like the word Darwin, or nature, or biology. Just say that instead of God, right?
The free market doesn't apply to reality. We don't determine scientific facts based on how many people adhere to them. Are you mental?
You just adhere to this nature. And the less you play God and the less you try to intervene in fate, the more you prosper. Look at the Western world. We let the free market go.
I really don't want to get into politics in the middle of a religious video, but jeez, this is why libertarians are so laughably wrong all the time.
And isn't it funny that Adam Smith talked about the invisible hand of capitalism? The invisible hand.
Adam Smith wasn't talking about a god. You know, Gavin, maybe you shouldn't smoke anything before you make videos. It just makes you look like an idiot.
This came up again recently in a movie called I Am Pencil, where they talked about the evolution of the pencil and how without any government influence, we get people getting the wood, getting the carbon, getting it all together and creating a pencil. And in the video, we actually see a magical hand form. In the West, where we let the free market prosper, we see lifespan going up. We see in the environment going up. We like to play doom and gloom, but by every single metric, things have been consistently getting better. That's because we've been adhering to our own inevitable nature, our own freedom. We've been trusting ourselves more and more and more.
And we haven't been relying on imaginary friends. We've been developing science and technology, and that's improved the human condition remarkably. We don't just leave things up to some farcical god. We get out there and do it ourselves. Do you have any clue what you're talking about, Gavin?
We've been letting our biology prosper. We've been letting advents in medicine happen. This is all part of the plan. It's sort of like in Prometheus, where that dude drinks that thing and he breaks down. We started out with an incredible, magical algorithm that is like a microchip that just keeps blossoming and getting better and better and better. And every time you come up with a flaw with this, you realize, no, it's actually perfect.
But these changes are not coming from a deity. They're coming from us. Are you incapable of understanding that?
Why do kids get cancer? If we were all immortal, it would be boring. If Superman goes to the Grand Canyon and just goes, swims around, swims out. We have to work to get it. We don't want to be immortal. We don't want to be Superman.
Oh yes, let's kill kids because it would be inconvenient if there were too many people. It wouldn't be fun. That's good thinking, Gavin.
Yes, there has to be consequences. There has to be danger. There has to be sickness. There has to be cancer. Because to just jump off a building and not suffer consequences, that's no kind of life.
Appropriate consequences? Yes, but the supposed consequences of the theistic world are absurd. I mean, if you jump off a building, you die. You cease to exist. The only life you actually have is snuffed out, and that's a consequence. But if your God exists, not only do you die, but you're tortured in hell for all eternity. And that's a bit ridiculous, don't you think? But then again, your God is a dick, so I guess we can't be surprised.
Now, the atheists go, well, hold on a second. Your stupid infinity thing contradicts itself when you look at us. We had an infinite amount of time to be here. We had monkeys on a typewriter. It was an infinite amount of pre-time to get to the Big Bang that led to Earth, that led to us. So you had a lot of time, and you created the complete works of Shakespeare. But you know that's not true.
Then why do the complete works of Shakespeare exist?
You know that this is a planet of Charlie Chaplin's talking in rap.
Yeah.
So, though it seems to make mathematical sense that we got here, you know it doesn't.
I love it when theists tell me what it is that I supposedly know because they're unable to imagine anything outside of their crazy irrational beliefs. So they assume that nobody else can either.
You know that this planet right here is equally as absurd as any of the other crazy planets I was talking about earlier. It's equally as absurd as a planet of views. We are on a planet of views right now.
Well, if by you mean humanity, then yes, that's where we are. And if some other life form had evolved to be the dominant species on this planet, we'd be a planet of them. So this is not surprising.
The math adds up, but it don't add up.
It adds up, you just don't like it. But your personal emotional reaction has nothing to do with reality.
That's proof there's a God. You dig?
Only in your own little delusional brain. For the rest of us, it's just proof you're an idiot. I hate videos like this because it's so painfully obvious that the theist is utterly clueless about pretty much everything. And there's pretty much no way to be respectful when you're pointing out their ignorance. So you wind up calling them names, which I admit I did plenty in my response. But what else can you say? It isn't like they're going to throw out their silly beliefs and adopt a realistic view. They're not. And it isn't like I think Gavin is a complete moron in everything he does. But he's got this one insane belief that he clings to tenaciously because it makes him feel good. Because he's delusional on this one particular topic. And he's trying desperately to justify his position when we all know that religion is entirely rationally and evidentially unjustifiable. And there's something really sad about that, isn't there?
everything changes.